They always try to keep their senses in fit working condition. They even go to the extent of transplanting monkeys' organs into their bodies once they get too old to enjoy with the vigor of youth. Such gross sense enjoyers do not understand that the mind is more subtle than the sense organs and superior to them. Superior to the mind is the intelligence, and behind the intelligence is the false ego, which is far superior to the intelligence and which covers the spirit soul. Philosophical inquiry into the existence of the soul will remain a subject beyond the reach of these gross materialists. The gross sense enjoyers are actually to be counted among the animals, because man has more serious matters to attend to than just titillating his senses. Hence, he is considered the most advanced among all the living entities. And indeed, we do find that some men comprehend the gravity of human life. They carefully reject living and they carefully reject chaotic living, emulate the exemplary lives of saintly persons, and direct their lives in such a way as to fulfill the purpose of human life. So this is a very interesting point, and it is further explained in the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where Srila Prabhupada explains that human beings are divided into two categories, the regulated and the unregulated. The unregulated are people engaged in gross sense gratification. They can't control their mind, they can't control their body, and they engage in all kinds of disgusting behavior. And then the regulated are people who follow Vedic principles and who attempt to overcome the influence of lust, anger, greed, envy, madness, and illusion. However, amongst these people, there are several categories, subcategories also. And we're going to discuss this now. In the 6th chapter, verse Nahi kalyana krit kaschit durgatim tatagachati. It says, humanity may be divided into two sections, namely the regulated and the non-regulated. Those who are engaged simply in bestial sense gratifications without knowledge of the next life or spiritual salvation belong to the non-regulated section. And those who follow the principles of prescribed duties in the scriptures are classified amongst the regulated section. The non-regulated section, both civilized and non-civilized, educated and non-educated, strong and weak, are full of animal propensities. Their activities are never auspicious because while enjoying the animal propensities of eating, sleeping, defending, and mating, they perpetually remain in material existence, which is always miserable. On the other hand, those who are regulated by scriptural injunctions and who thus rise gradually to Krishna consciousness certainly progress in life. So there seems to be a little disconnect here. It says that amongst the non-regulated, there are the educated and the non-educated. Now, what is Prabhupada referring to? In the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, it explains who are the Duskriti. Duskriti, 7th chapter, 15th verse, it says, Namam Duskritina Mudha Naradama Prapadyante Naradama Maya Apita Jnana Asram Bhavam Asritaha. This says, those miscreants who are grossly foolish, who are lowest among mankind, whose knowledge is stolen by illusion, and who partake of the atheistic nature of demons do not surrender unto me. So, the four categories here of duskritina, or grossly foolish people, are one, the muda. Muda is compared to a donkey. that works very hard for a little bit of food and enjoys sense gratification in a gross way. We won't go into that. And the second category is called Naradama. Now, Naradama are people who are very well educated, but they use their education to improve sense gratification. They're engaged in social, political, and even religious life. And they don't really follow religious principles. They pay lip service to religious principles, but they don't follow them seriously. And Naradama means the worst or the lowest of humankind, because they're highly educated. They know what is the truth, but they're too weak or they're inimical to it, and they don't follow. And they usually like to follow religion without God. One example of that are New Age religions. Another example of that is Buddhism. And another example of that is the Mayavad, false following of Vedanta. And that means that they are inimical to the concept of a personal God, because that would require personal responsibility. Therefore, they vacillate toward religion without God. And they are very adept at claiming that there's no absolute authority. Everything is relative. There's no absolute truth. And they are civilized in the sense they're well-dressed, they have good education, they have good economic standing. But they're very frivolous and not serious about religious principles. Now, if they do follow religious principles, they follow them in a self-interested way for prestige or material, let's say, advancement. Let's say a person who is, like we have an example, the CEO of Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A is a very famous company in America. They have a big store in Bellevue. Chick-fil-A is the main competitor of Kentucky Fried Chicken. Now, the owner of that is a Christian, and he's a good Christian. He never opens his vast chain of stores. He has over, I think, 4,000 franchisees. He never opens on Sunday. And he treats all his franchisees and his workers very generously. And he tithes the church 10%. Now, he's a multi-billionaire. So that's a lot of money that he gives to the church every year. However, there's not much difference between him and Colonel Sanders of Kentucky Fried Chicken, because he slaughters hundreds of millions of chickens every year. And but on the other hand, he's a good Christian. In other words, he does follow his religion seriously, except for certain things like killing unnecessarily so many animals and serving meat to so many people. So that's an example of a person who is educated, who is generous, who does follow religious principles, but he also engages in ghastly behavior. Now, why do I say that? Because if you study the life of Jesus, you'll see that when he entered the temple of Solomon and David in Jerusalem, he overturned the tables of the money changers and was absolutely aghast at the way that there was wholesale killing of animals in that temple. And at that point, he became determined to start a religion in which there was no more sacrifice of animals in temples. So, by overturning the tables of the money changers, why were there money changers in the temple and the synagogue? Because people were coming from all over the old world, the Middle East, bringing animals and having them sacrificed on the altar of this gigantic temple. The remains of that temple is there today. The only part remaining from that temple is called the Wailing Wall of the Jews, and above it is the Alaska Mosque. And there's an ongoing battle between the Jews and the Muslims. The Jews want to tear down the mosque and rebuild their temple, and the Muslims refuse to let that happen. So, in any way, Jesus started the Christian religion to stop animal slaughter in the temple. Money changers. They were money changers because people were coming from all the different countries in the Middle East to perform the sacrifice. So just like you have money changers on the streets in Bombay, in Calcutta, Delhi, all the major cities in India. If you have dollars and you want to have rupees, if you go in Calcutta and Bara Bazaar, you'll see people with 25,000 rupees in their hand like this, going like that, showing it to people and asking if they want to get their dollars changed. You never saw that? You've never seen anything like that? Well, I mean, you've seen it. Right? Yeah, also, every major city in India where there are tourists, they have street money changers. They walk around with big bundles of money and they change. Anyway, so they had the same thing, but in the big temple of David in Jerusalem. Now, after Jesus was crucified, the Persians destroyed that temple and forced the Jews to leave their homeland and took them into exile. So the great, let's say, goal of all the Jews is to, first of all, free their homeland. So they did that, but then it's not really their homeland until they rebuild that temple. You say, but they can't because the Muslims have their second most sacred place right there, because Muhammad at one time came to Jerusalem, and from that mountain area, he went up to heaven and met, or at least had some kind of discussion with God and the angels, and then he came back. So it's considered the second most holy place in Islam after Makkah and Medina. So therefore, they're never going to give up their temple. And if you read the newspapers, there's always fighting. There's always the risk of war, because the Jews want to tear that mosque down and rebuild their temple, which is their destiny. Anyway, so we see that Christianity was started by Jesus to stop animal slaughter. And today, in the name of Christianity, there is wholesale animal slaughter all over the world. Even in India, as soon as a Hindu becomes a Christian, first thing they do is eat meat. And also, if they convert to Islam, the first thing they do is eat cow's meat, you see. Okay, so the problem is that when Kali Yuga began, the Brahmins in India did not stop animal slaughter during sacrifice, and nor did the Jews. And that was a major mistake, because animal slaughter is not permitted in Kali Yuga. Ritual animal slaughter. But it's a big business. You make a lot of money doing that. Therefore, they continued, and because of that, religion has become degraded in Kali Yuga. Okay, so the Naradamas are people who are highly educated. They know what the truth is, but due to their perverted appetite for sense gratification, they don't follow the truth. They know what the truth is, but they don't follow it. Just like out of the 850 million Hindus in India, half of them eat meat. They know they shouldn't eat meat, but still they eat meat. Another 25% don't eat meat at home, but they eat meat when they go out. So you only have 25% of the Hindus in India who are actually vegetarian, and that number is decreasing also, you see. So there's a major problem, not only amongst the Christians and Muslims, but amongst the Hindus also. Let's hope that Prime Minister Modi can change that. So now, those are the educated, non-regulated people. Now, of the regulated people, you have three categories also. Those who follow the path of auspiciousness can be divided into three sections, namely, 1, the followers of scriptural rules and regulations who are enjoying material prosperity. 2, those who are trying to find ultimate liberation from material existence. And 3, those who are genuine devotees in Krishna consciousness. Those who are following the rules and regulations of scriptures for material happiness may further be divided into 2 classes. Those who are materialistically inclined and desire the fruit of their action, and those who desire no fruit for material sense gratification. So, and then those who are after fruitive results for sense gratification may be elevated to a higher standard of life, even to the higher material planets, but still, because they are not free from material existence, they are not following the truly auspicious path. The only auspicious activities are those which lead one to liberation. Any activity which is not aimed at ultimate self-realization or liberation from the material bodily concept of life is not at all auspicious. Activity in Krishna consciousness is the only auspicious activity, and anyone who voluntarily accepts all bodily discomforts for the sake of making progress on the path of Krishna consciousness can be called a perfect transcendentalist under severe austerity. And because the Eightfold Yoga system is directed toward the ultimate realization of Krishna consciousness, such practice is also auspicious, and no one who is trying his best in this matter need fear degradation. So you have 3 categories of the of people who are regulated. Those who follow the scriptural rules and regulations and who are enjoying material prosperity. So you have people like, for example, you have Prahlad Maharaj, you have Dhruva Maharaj, you have Priyavrata Maharaj, you have Prithu Maharaj. These were all, you have Kulushakar Alvar, who was a king. These were all highly prominent persons. They were kings, and they had great opulence. Yudhisthira Maharaj, another one. There's many. And they were enjoying very high grade of material pleasure, but their real interest was spreading Krishna consciousness and organizing society so that everyone in the society could make spiritual progress. They were not really interested in material sense gratification. And the best example is Lord Rama himself. He was an ideal king. He sacrificed everything to lead the people in his kingdom back to Godhead. He himself lived very, let's say, modestly, even though he was the king of the whole world at that time. Yudhisthira Maharaj was also the king of the entire, this whole entire planet. But they all lived relatively modestly. In other words, they lived in opulence, but their personal habits were very modest and based on self-realization. Okay, so, but then there are other people who follow regulative principles but are attached to sense gratification. And although it looks like they're on an auspicious path, actually their lives are very inauspicious because they'll continue in the cycle of birth and death. They might be elevated to the higher material planets, even to Swarga, but then when the benefits of their pious activities are spent, they fall down again. And this is explained in the 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna says, 9th chapter, verse number 21, Tetam bhuktva swarga lokam vishalam, shine punyamati lokam vishanti. He says, when pious persons who are elevated to heavenly planets have thus enjoyed vast heavenly sense pleasure, and the results of their pious activities are exhausted, they return to this mortal planet again. Thus, those who seek sense enjoyment by adhering to the principles of the 3 Vedas achieve only repeated birth and death. This is the 9th chapter, 21st verse. So they come back again, and therefore it's a waste of time for people. However, those who are serious about following the regulative principles, you have 2 classes of people who are considered transcendentalists. One is the person trying to achieve impersonal liberation, and they are what you call the genuine Brahmanandis, people who are trying to achieve the Brahman realization through a life of austerity and strict following of regulative principles. But the best of all are the genuine devotees, the servants of Krishna. Now, devotee, although achieving self-realization, is not interested in liberation. The devotee is already liberated by the fact that devotees don't have any attraction to material sense gratification. Therefore, Krishna says, Te sam jnani nikta yukto, ekabhakti vasishyate, priyo hi jnanino tyartam, aham sacha mama priya. 7th chapter, 17th verse. Of persons who are trying for perfection, the one who is in full knowledge and who is always engaged in pure devotional service is the best, for I am very dear to him, and he is dear to me. All these devotees who try for perfection, are undoubtedly magnanimous souls, but he who is situated in knowledge of me, I consider to be just like myself, my own self. Being engaged in my transcendental service, he is sure to attain me, the highest and most perfect goal. So we have a stark difference between those who follow regulative principles and who are enjoying material opulence, but they become attached to that material opulence, and therefore they miss the opportunity of becoming liberated from the cycle of birth and death. Then you have those who are really aiming for liberation, and of those, there's 2 categories there. You have people who want to achieve liberation by merging into the Brahman effulgence, or people who want to go to Vaikuntha. Anyone who goes to Vaikuntha never comes back again. They're eternally liberated. Those who merge into the Brahman effulgence, they fall down eventually. And then you have those people who are genuine, pure devotees. They have no desire even for liberation. And they are liberated either in the material world or the spiritual world. If they go to the spiritual world, they go directly to Goloka Vrindavan, which is above Vaikuntha. It's part of Vaikuntha, but it's the highest part of Vaikuntha. Or if they stay in the material world, they're always with Krishna during his pastimes. Like Arjuna is a person who's liberated eternally in the material world. Every time Krishna appears, he is with him, engaging in his transcendental pastimes. So here, yeah. Yes. Well, we made a mistake. But it's so hard to go back to Vaikuntha. You'll never make that mistake a second time. You understand? It's possible to make a mistake and fall down from Vaikuntha. But it's so hard to go back. That you become so, let's say, overwhelmed by the effort to return back to Godhead. You would never make that mistake again. Like, for example, if you are terribly cheated, right? Let's say somebody calls you up and they say, oh, you just want a free vacation to Cancun, Mexico. Do you want to receive the ticket by snail mail? Do you want to get it by email, or you want to pick it up at the airport? So which way you want to get the ticket? Huh? Huh? You want to get it by mail? Okay. So they say, okay, we'll send it to you. So we need your address. We need your Social Security number and your bank account number or your credit card. So you give them that. You wait 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Nothing comes. So you try and call them up. The number has been disconnected. Then you realize you were cheated. There's no ticket, but then your next credit card statement, you see you're $5,000 less. Someone used your credit card and got $5,000 from your account. Now, the next time someone calls you up and says, oh, you just want a free ticket to Mazatlan, Mexico. How do you want to receive the ticket? By snail mail, email, or you want to pick it up at the airport? What would you say? Right. You wouldn't do it a second time, would you? Well, in the same way, because of all the trouble you go through, to go back to Vaikuntha, you would never, and all the trouble you went through in the material world, you would never make that mistake again. Just like you would never fall for that fraud 2 times, right? So we see that, but one can fall from Brahmajyoti, because Brahmajyoti, merging into the eternal Brahman, effulgence, is already a fallen position. Why is it fallen? Because there's devotional service to Krishna in the spiritual world. There's devotional service for Krishna in the material world. But there's no devotional service for Krishna in Brahman effulgence. Therefore, it's already a fallen position. You don't really fall down from Brahman. You're already fallen. Right? But you fall down from a position that's liberated, and that is Vaikuntha or Goloka Vrindavan. But the good news is only a minority of people fall down. 3/4 of the living entities never fall down. It's just we're part of the minority, the 1/4 that did fall down because we became envious of Krishna. Now, the proof that someone is envious of Krishna is they don't want to take part in devotional service. They'll do everything else. They'll do charity, they'll do walk for cancer, they'll do this thing, that thing, but nothing for Krishna. That proves that they're envious. But because we're part and parcel of Krishna, if we become envious of Krishna, we become envious of ourselves. Jai Shri Radha Nilamala Kishe. When a person is envious of themselves, they deny themselves the opportunity to be Krishna conscious. They don't want at all to be Krishna conscious. They don't make any effort. Just like on Sankirtan, we're chanting every Saturday. This last Saturday, Usually you see, sometimes older people, when they walk past this, they hold their hands to their ears. They don't want to hear anything, right? This is the first time I saw a little kid. He was like, 5 or 6 years old. He put his fingers over his ears. Didn't want to hear. He was starting early, right? So that, let's say, resistance to hear the holy name. Whereas other people you see, they're walking by, they start dancing, and they smile, and they chant, they say Hare Krishna, right? But the people that go by like this, and make a bad face, they are envious of themselves. Because we're part and parcel of Krishna. If we become envious of Krishna, we become envious of ourselves also. Okay, so therefore Prabhupada is saying, followers of various religions such as the Christians, Hindus, Muslims, and Buddhists all adhere to the rules of their faith according to the intensity of their belief and the circumstances in their respective countries. Lord Krishna speaks of these persons in Bhagavad Gita 7th chapter 3rd verse. Manusyanam sahasresu kaschit jatati siddhaye jatatam api siddhanam kaschit mam veti tatvataha. Out of many thousands among men, one may endeavor for perfection, and of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. In other words, this verse proves that very few people will actually become genuine lovers of Krishna. Very few people. Why? Well, just like there are very few people that buy genuine diamonds. They buy manufactured diamonds, fake diamonds, and so forth. But very few people will buy a genuine diamond. Why? Because it's expensive. But the people that do buy a genuine diamond, they appreciate it very much. I once saw a lady who had a really large diamond ring. This was in Dubai. I was standing on the second floor, looking down at the first floor, and there were some shops there. And this one lady, her rings. I was far away, but I could see the ring looked like the sun. It was reflecting light like anything, right? And you could tell it's a genuine diamond. Whereas a piece of glass doesn't reflect like that. It reflects a little bit, but not like that. This was like a spotlight. You could tell it was probably, it was a big diamond too. You could tell it probably was worth about $50,000, $100,000, maybe $200,000. So you see, people who can afford something like that, they really appreciate it. But there are very few people that can afford it. Same way, Krishna consciousness or pure Krishna consciousness, very few people actually want it. Because we've been corrupted so much by material association, we don't really want something so lofty and pure. And we don't want to allocate the time or the energy necessary to get it. We have too many other mundane things that preoccupy us. Just like there was one gentleman, he was a relatively wealthy man, and one day a great saint and sadhu came to see him, and the saintly man was kind to sadhus, and the sadhu sat down with him, and he said, Pandit sat down and said, Prabhuji, he said, you've raised your kids very well, they're all well situated, now you should give up material life, come with me, and we will practice Krishna consciousness together. He said, oh, no, I can't do it. I have my grandchildren, they're still young, I want to get them educated. He said, okay, how long will that take? So, at least, they have to be at least 20 years old, get them married, get them through school. He said, okay, well, that's another 10 years. He said, I'll come back. He said, okay. So after 10 years, he came back. And he said, now, will you come with me? He said, oh, no, I cannot come. Why? He said, well, grandchildren got married, but they have some children now. So I have to take care of the great-grandchildren. He said, well, how long is that going to take? Well, let's wait till at least they get through high school. I said, okay, how long will that take? So it's at least another 10 years. 10, 15 years. He said, okay, I'll come back. But that's a long time. He said, no, it goes by fast. So he came back after 15 years, and there were a lot of family there. He said, where's the grandfather? He said, oh, he died. So you see, by the way, who's taking care of the great-grandchildren? Isn't the great-grandchildren are there now, but there's no grandfather anymore. So he kept pushing it off, and then he died. In other words, he never really wanted to be liberated once and for all from the cycle of birth and death. He was too attached. So we can smile at that, but that could very well be us. That could very well be us. We get so entangled in petty things that we don't think about the ultimate issue of life. The ultimate issue of life is that we're all going to die, and before we die, if we become Krishna conscious, we have a chance at immortality. And if we don't, then we have to go through the whole nonsense again. So, out of many thousands among men or people, one may endeavor for perfection, but of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. So, since time immemorial, living entities have been going through many lower species of life, gradually rising through the evolutionary process, and due to some good fortune, receiving a human birth. In the lower species of life, the spirit souls are densely covered by the material modes, and thus carnal appetites dominate their lives. Among the human species, some denounce sensual pleasures and are honored by the world as saints, yogis, philosophers, scholars, and so on. They experience mental perceptions far superior to gross sensual experiences and may reach even subtler levels of fine intellect. But even more subtle than the intellect is the spirit soul. So true spirituality, or the real religion of the living entity, means to be situated in the self. Except for the religion of the self, all paths and religions are pseudo-spiritual exercises consisting only of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending oneself from danger. These are the primary activities of the animals. So this is a very hard indictment Prabhupada is making, but it's the truth. He's talking about sub-religious principles practiced by sub-religious religions. Those are religions that profess economic development, basically dharma, artha, kama, moksha. Dharma means following religion, but usually for a material purpose. Artha means economic development, and because money is the means of acquiring sense gratification. And then kama is sense gratification. And then moksha usually means, in the minds of most people, elevation to higher heavenly planets, where the sense gratification is greater than here. But the end result is sense gratification. There's no genuine desire to purely serve Krishna. Therefore, one can waste the human form of life even thinking that they are very religious, but actually they're engaged in sub-religious principles. Okay, so we'll stop right there. Continue a little bit more tomorrow. Are there any questions anyone would like to ask? When we say something is a sub-religious principle, it means that the final goal of that religious practice is not really love of God. The final goal is improving one's personal lifestyle and sense gratification. So obviously, people who are very regulated, people who are honest, who are moral, they usually lead a good life and usually have good families and they have good education. But that is not going to free a person from the cycle of birth and death. That's like becoming a first-class prisoner rather than a third-class prisoner, but you're still a prisoner. What is the prison? Prison is birth, death, old age, and disease, and repeat and repetition of it. Therefore, why? Because Krishna explains that the symptom of a person who is eligible for liberation from the cycle of birth and death is explained in the last verse of the 9th chapter. Manmana bhava mad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mam ivaishyasi yuktvaivam atmanam mat parayanaha. Engage your mind always in thinking of me, become my devotee. Offer obeisances to me and worship me, being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. So this complete absorption of Krishna is only possible when one actually loves Krishna. To love Krishna, one has to have some knowledge of Krishna. And one has to know how to please Krishna. It's an art. The gopis have mastered 64 different arts in order to love Krishna and please him in so many different ways. So that love of Krishna is not it's not based on lust. It's something absolutely pure. And the proof of its purity is that one cannot take their mind off of Krishna even for a second. So therefore Krishna says, engage your mind always in thinking of me. Our real life is in the mind, much more than in the body. And if we can't control the mind by keeping it focused on Krishna, we will fail as a human being. The animals can't fail. The fact that they have an animal body means they already failed. But human beings can either succeed or fail because they have free will. Okay, if there are no questions, then we'll stop. Yeah. Yes.
So the example which you gave that man kept procrastinating.
Yes.
So is there a way to, let's say, of course, we're part of it, but sometimes when I tell my father answers, I hear those answers only. He has one or the other reason to delay or procrastinate. So is there any way or workaround to solve such person?
An accident, a heart attack, a cancer diagnosis, they all work. They all work. As soon as they get scared, like for example, one time, one lady went to the doctor, she was very much overweight. And she said, "Doctor, I've tried every diet. Not one has worked. In fact, when I go on a diet, I gain more weight." So the doctor said, "Okay." He said, "Well, let's do a diagnosis first." So he took her blood pressure and did this, did that, and she said, "Well, doctor, okay, you've been, you took my blood pressure, you took my pulse, you looked at my tongue, you looked at my ear, you looked in my eyeballs. Now, tell me what do you recommend?" He said, "Well," he said, "I'm sorry to tell you, but you have a terminal disease." She said, "What? I didn't come here for a terminal disease. I just want to lose some weight." He said, "Well, yeah, but you're going to lose your life." She said, "What? My life? What do you mean?" He said, I don't give you more than maybe 2 months to live." She said, "What? I don't feel sick. I feel overweight and I feel uncomfortable. I don't feel so well. Sometimes my heart beats a little fast. And are you telling me the truth, doctor?" I said, "Yeah." So "I give you 2 months." So what's the disease? And he gave her some name. It's full of Latin and Greek words she didn't understand. So she said, "My God," she said, that sounds. Even the name of my disease sounds bad. She said, "I can't even pronounce it myself." He said, "Yeah, it's pretty rare disease." So she went home. She says, "Well, is there anything you can give me, some medicine or something?" He said, "Yeah, you can take these pills." that'll ease the pain. It's going to get really bad soon. I said, really? She started crying, and she was all broken up. She goes home and tells her husband and kids, and they would call the relatives in India and all over the world, and everyone said, well, you should go to see another doctor, And she said, but he's a specialist, he's a PhD. So she gets so nervous and distraught, she can't even eat. And she can hardly sleep. Her husband gets some sleeping pills. And so it's really bad. 2 months go by, and she's hardly eating or sleeping. And she's dying of not eating and sleeping, right? So, but she doesn't die. So she goes back to see the doctor. The doctor said, give me 2 months. I'm still alive. He said, look, I have to tell you the truth. You're all right. There's nothing wrong with you. She said, what? What do you mean I'm all right? He said, there's nothing wrong with you. So why did you tell me I was going to die? He said, well, if I gave you another diet, you wouldn't have lost any weight. But by telling you you're going to die, how much weight did you lose? Well, I lost 50 pounds. Well, you see? So when a person gets diagnosed with a terminal disease, they suddenly become serious. They start praying to God. Like I've seen many people come here with terminal diseases in their family, and they come to pray. They're going to have some big operation or whatever. But if the operation goes well, we don't see them again till the next time they're sick. That's what happens. So most people are so caught up in material life, it's almost impossible for them to take up spiritual life. The only possibility is they meet a genuine devotee, and the devotee takes time to be kind to them and try to explain what is the truth of life. Sometimes they become, let's say, serious. But on their own, if they don't have the help of a genuine devotee, it's almost impossible. There's too much diversions in material life for people to take spiritual life seriously. But the secret is regular hearing and chanting. Hearing and chanting Bhagavad Gita and Hare Krishna. Then one can gradually make a difference. But even that is too much to ask for. Not everyone can chant. Not everyone wants to hear. So, therefore, Krishna says, Manusyanam sahasresu just kaschit chariti siddhaye jatatam api siddhanam kaschit mam veti tattvataha. Out of thousands and thousands of people who try for perfection, hardly one attains perfection. And of those who have attained perfection, very few know me in truth. So, we should count ourselves very fortunate to be able to be associated with the temple and have an opportunity to hear and chant. Hare Krishna.